to Money Matters TV. I'm Audrey Greenberg, host of today's show and founder of the Center for Breakthrough Medicines. Today, my co-host is Dan White, president and CEO of Daniel White and Associates. Hey, Dan, how's it going?
Good, Audrey. How about yourself?
It's going well. I'm so happy to be hosting the show with you today. I know we haven't hosted together before, and so I'm so interested to learn about what you do in your background and how the audience can potentially be helped by some of your advice.
Well, that's what we're here to talk about. So I think we can give them some good pointers.
Yeah, exactly. So can you tell us a little bit about Medicare coverage and LTC needs such as nursing home stays and at-home care? Look, the population is aging. I'm in the sandwich generation. I've got my mom that I'm taking care of, and I've got my young kids that I'm taking care of, and all of this can get expensive. So what can one do to get in front of some of this stuff, and how can we work with Medicare to help us?
Yeah, our practice is geared to people that are near retirement. So we're dealing with the 55 plus age group, and long-term care is going to be a need probably for 2/3 of these people. So the question is, there's a lot of people are under the misconception that Medicare actually will cover long-term care, and that unfortunately is a misnomer. Most nursing home care is custodial care, and Medicare does not cover custodial care. So what we try to get people to think of, the other thing you're running into is with the traditional LTC policies, what we're seeing is they were mispriced and people are facing a lot of rate increases. So it seems like every year they're getting a rate increase. Some premiums might have doubled in the last 5 to 6 years. So they have the option of either paying more money or reducing coverage for the same cost. So how we've been able to kind of pivot around that is there's products today, could be annuity products or life insurance products where you put in a lump sum of money, say $200,000. And if you can pass some health questions, there's about 5 or 6 questions, you might get a tripler. Your 200 might buy you 600,000 of long-term care benefit. The other objection we hear with traditional long-term care policies is if you don't go into a nursing home, then you paid all this money for the program and you never used it. Well, that's what insurance is. But this gets around that because the 200,000 that you put in, it's an annuity product and you're actually naming a beneficiary. So if you never use it for long-term care, then the 200,000 plus some interest is going to pass on to beneficiaries.
Oh, that's a good strategy. Very interesting. And anyone can do it?
Yeah, it's like I said, there's about 5 or 6 health questions to get that triple long-term care benefit. So obviously, if you the sad part is if people are looking for long-term care, then it probably means they probably can't get it.
Interesting. Yeah, it's too late. They run it through their number cruncher Excel spreadsheet and it doesn't work out anymore. Okay, so get early. Early is important, I guess.
Yes, look at it sooner rather than later.
Got it. So now let's talk about Social Security claiming strategies. And how do you go about strategically maximizing that payout? And how does that all work?
Yeah, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal recently that said the average person leaves about $111,000 of Social Security benefits on the table because they claim at the wrong time. So we actually have Social Security claiming software that will actually go through 2,000 different scenarios and tell you the best way to claim. But a simple rule of thumb is this. With a married couple, you try to maximize the higher of the two benefits. Because when one of you dies, the surviving spouse is going to get the higher of the two. So a lot of times we'll have one spouse that has either a little bit higher benefit or a significantly higher benefit. That's the one you want to try to hold off until 70. From full retirement age until the age of 70, you're earning 8% deferred credits on your Social Security benefit. And the difference between claiming at the earliest age of 62 and holding off till 70, it's about 77% more of a monthly benefit. So we never tell both spouses to hold off until 70 because, quite frankly, nobody wants to have the best walker in the neighborhood at the age of 85. So we want to maximize one of the two. So the larger the two benefits, you try to maximize. The lower the two, you can take whenever you want, but if you take it before full retirement age, you're going to be subject to an earnings test. And if you make more than about $22,000 a year this year, for every $2 you go over that, they're going to take away $1 of Social Security. So it doesn't really pay you to do that unless you're not working. If you're not working, there's no earnings test involved.
Interesting. So how are you involved in that? So if I want to go through this analysis, you send me this. Are you working with me on what to do with the funds once I receive them, or how do you make money?
No, this is again, when we're dealing with retirement planning. So Social Security is a big piece of the retirement income plan. So if you're working with an advisor that's not giving you any advice on Social Security, then they're missing a big part of the plan, So we don't get paid to give Social Security advice, but it is part of our service that we do for people to try and craft that income plan for them in retirement.
Got it. So another thing I think about, I'm about 50, and I'm always thinking about sort of how I maximize retirement, but also what's interesting is this whole concept of Roth IRA or Roth 401k, regular 401k, and how I optimize that strategy to potentially lower my taxes, right, in future years. And so what are some strategies really that someone can consider to think about their lowering their tax bill now, right, now that I'm 50, and then maybe later once I'm not working anymore?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, which way do you go? The traditional contributions to IRAs and 401ks, you are getting the tax deduction today. So if you're in a high income bracket today, you might need that deduction today because you may be in a lower bracket in retirement. Okay. So it really depends on where you're at now. For younger people, I say automatically, if you have Roth capability inside your company retirement plan, by all means, if you're in a low bracket, put everything as much as possible into a Roth. For people that are mid-level, upper-level management and they're earning a high income today, they probably ought to be maximizing the pre-tax capability. We always like to think we're going to be in a lower bracket in retirement. That's not always the case. And then the elephant in the room is with the government being $31.5 trillion in the hole.
Yeah.
Where do we think tax rates are going to go? I mean, they've got to go up. So that's the thing. How high are they going to go up? If they stay relatively where they are now, I would say most people may be in a lower bracket in retirement, but that's not always the case. But I think strategies you can use, try to by all means, max out the workplace plans. I mean, April 15th is right around the corner. If you're eligible, you can still contribute to an IRA. For 2022, the max was $6,000, unless you're 50 or older, $1,000 catch up. But you got to be taking advantage of all the opportunities the government is giving you through workplace plans. And then there's other strategies. I mean, the standard deduction is so high right now. A lot of people don't even get to itemize their deductions. So if you're charitably inclined, maybe you bunch 2 years into one. And that might put you where you can take advantage of that, because with the standard deduction, most people don't even get the charitable deduction anymore.
Right. That's a good point. So I think we do have an audience question that Rachel Young of Wayne wants to know if you could suggest some good ETFs for dividends that she would consider buying in the future.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot about the dividend-paying stocks because the market has been as volatile as it has been. And I reached out to one of our investment advisor reps here at Dan White & Associates, Andrew Wood, and he came up with the Pacer Global Cash Cow Dividend ETF. The symbol is GCAL. And they go through this screening process that they do. They narrow it down to the top 100 companies with highest free cash flow and highest dividend yield. That ETF right now, it's got a dividend yield of 7.7%, which is it's pretty darn good. So that would be one that we would recommend if somebody's looking for an ETF for dividends. Again, the symbol is GCAL, and it stands for the Pacer Global Cash Dividend ETF.
Okay, good. Well, that's great. If you out there want to submit a question to Money Matters, here's how you do it.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, MONEY, -matters, MATTERS, TV.com.
Thank you so much. So with that, we give a warm welcome to Joslyn Ewart, a welcome to Money Matters TV. Thank you so much. Joslyn is a board member at the Forum of Executive Women, and I'm very interested in the subject matter as a member of the forum, and so pleased to have you on the show. So welcome, Joslyn, and please tell us a little bit about the forum, and also I know you have a regular full-time job, how maybe you got into the board position at the forum and what led you there through your normal career, we'll call it.
Yeah, good questions. Thank you so much, first of all, for welcoming me to the show during Women's History Month. A very auspicious time to be on this show and talking about issues that matter to women, especially financial issues that matter to women. I own an investment management and wealth planning firm. I started in financial services as a second career, but way back now in the early 2000s, and brought on a business partner in 2015, Mackenzie Frankel. Our firm is Entrust Financial. We are a completely independent registered investment advisor firm. We do business as fee-only planners and do holistic management, which we have found over time is very, very helpful to people in terms of achieving their long-term goals. And of course, this kind of work led me to being very interested in being a member of the Forum of Executive Women, which is the premier executive group for executive women professionals in the Philadelphia region and beyond. We have members that are beyond our Philadelphia region. And what interested me is the work that the Forum does in terms of trying to have a positive impact on the community, not just for women, but really for the entire regional area. And I have so much respect for these women and for the contribution that they're making that benefits all of us.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Can you give a little bit of knowledge in terms of your forum position, in terms of what is causing women to leave the workforce? It's been the period of the great breakup, I think McKinsey called it in their annual review of women in the workforce. What is causing women to leave the workforce right now? And what happened during COVID?
Well, those are some really interesting questions. And as I mentioned, the Forum of Executive Women does want to make a positive impact on the community. So a number of years ago, it was really about a year or so before the pandemic, they decided that it was time to launch a pay equity committee to study what was really going on in our region with respect to women and underrepresented groups, not just women, but underrepresented groups. You know, how much equity had we been able to achieve, really, even in the 21st century? There's one facet, which is the legal environment, and then there's the facet of, you know, are these rules and regs being followed, or is it kind of business as usual because people kind of don't get around to making changes? And this was really brought into the forefront during the pandemic because all of a sudden women who do the majority of the work in the home, that proportion of work done by women in the home compared to the gentlemen in the home hasn't changed much over the decades. It sort of feels like it should have, but it really hasn't. So all of a sudden, here we are with the pandemic, and women not only have their normal amount of domestic duties and maybe are now negotiating remote work responsibilities, but now they have children in the home who are supposed to be online doing educational work all day long. It was literally overwhelming. And in Pennsylvania in particular, we do not have, this is another important facet here, we don't have strong laws that protect families and protect the opportunity to have childcare. So what happened during the pandemic, which really drove so many women out of the workforce, especially at the lower to mid-level of working women, was the need for someone to be there to make sure that their children were protected, were going to school online, and just taking care of all the other details that have to be done to keep life going. So what happened, as you mentioned, Audrey, is that so many women had to leave the workforce. They were forced to, and they are trickling back, but they're really not all back yet for all the reasons I just mentioned.
Got it.
Hey, Joslyn, welcome to the show. And another quick question for you. So we know a lot of women have left the workforce, but what other factors are prompting women to not only leave their current job, but seeking work at other companies?
That's a really interesting question to deal with, Dan. I think one of the things that happened when women were at home and kind of realized the breadth of the responsibilities that they do face, and knowing, as the pandemic showed all of us, that things can change on a dime, they decided when they do trickle back to the workforce, or even if they were able to continue to work remotely and did not have to remove themselves from the workforce, they decided that how they spent their workday mattered more to them than it ever had before. And it kind of, the pandemic really showed which employers were family friendly and which employers were so focused on their bean counting that they kind of forgot it took high quality, talented, skilled employees to really make the beans go where the accountants want them to go. So in any case, women have really rethought what it means to them to be in the workforce and to have a job that's satisfying, and an employer who not only cares about their work product, but also cares that they as a person can thrive and then offer the best possible talent to the company.
Yeah. And I think part of that, right, is being able to be hybrid, because a lot of women like myself, I have 3 young kids at home. I happen to come into the office every day, but we have 400 people here. Some people do need, and this is heavily a female issue, a hybrid work environment to allow them to have asynchronous even work where they could work possibly late at night or, during certain hours of the day. So what do you think is some of the benefit of that to women employees, and how has that been potentially impacting the dropout rate?
Well, I'm really glad that you asked that, Audrey, because what I would like for your audience to know is that in the world of women in the workplace, where women tend to plateau and not catapult forward is at the middle management level. And as I said earlier, the forum is senior executive women, but many women who have the ability don't move forward to the higher levels of management precisely for what you just put your finger on. If they have to be traveling all week, they have to be in the office for 8 or 10-hour working days, they know that they just cannot, there are not enough hours in the day to do that. We don't have any remote work days. They just don't have enough hours in the day to do that and care for their families. And it's very interesting in a lot of the work that we did as a pay equity committee and continue to do, some of the major corporations, because they want the best possible talent to move up the ranks in their organizations, they are structuring ways for remote work, even for potential employees that might not live in the area. And all of these new ideas came into the fore because of what we all experienced during the pandemic. And so part of the new work environment for companies who are really forward thinking and want the best possible talent from across the country is they may structure a month of work so that the employee must be on site for a week, but the rest of the month, in any given month, the rest of the month, they can work remotely. And this permits them to tap into talent at a long distance. And it also permits women to care for their families and have the opportunity to advance and be promoted throughout the organization in a really robust and substantive manner.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. COVID really has changed the employment landscape with people being able to work, thousands of miles away from where their jobs are. So it has changed things drastically. But how helpful are managers, when you're in this hybrid work environment? How helpful are managers to the women employees who report to them?
Managers, and I have to really generalize here, so of course there are exceptions, but in general, managers have to really be brought up to speed about how to nurture, how to sponsor the advancement of both women and underrepresented groups in their organization who may start at the lower levels but have a great deal of capacity. So there's a degree of training and a degree of corporate commitment that goes behind this. But there are very straightforward ways to make this happen. For instance, if a manager knows that they're going to be evaluated on what kind of time and effort have they put into sponsoring those employees who report to them, and identify talent, and then find a way to help that person with talent be prepared to move on through the organization and to continue to serve that organization at higher and higher levels. If managers are expected to do this, if they're rewarded in terms of their compensation structure to do this, we see quite a good deal of change in a positive direction.
That's super interesting. I know in healthcare in particular, sort of my global industry, women are actually a majority of entry-level jobs. And then as they advance, it has a huge dropout rate, right? And so it gets to the C-level and even the board level positions where it's like single digits, if we're lucky, in terms of percentage, where we went from majority. So I guess my question to you is, what interferes with that? Like, why aren't women able to advance to these senior leadership roles? And is there something that, obviously managers can do something about it, but is there anything else that can be done?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that the companies, and we showcase a number of local companies, Children's Hospital was one, Hamilton Lane was one, and we also showcase the analytical work of David Anderson from Villanova University in our Level Up Playbook and Pay Parity report that we published at the forum last year for the first time, and we're going to make updates to that report every year. It showcases best practices in the region. It has very specific strategies for what corporations can do. And what's fascinating is a lot of these strategies to move the needle and to really develop talent that's already interested in the organization and has already proved itself are not really that difficult. It's a question of paying attention. It's a question of corporate culture paying attention and making some new decisions. Like I said, you had mentioned the remote work. Well, with remote work, that's just one example of a way that women can have a family and move up to higher levels in the organization for which they're qualified at the same time, as I like to say. And these are very valuable strategies that a corporation can implement. And hopefully we'll be able to put the link online. This is an online report. I hope we'll be able to add that link to your show for people who are watching this show today. But all of this just needs to be structured. And I think a primary part of this structure is that all positions in an organization need to be delineated. They need to be transparent. If you have job A, this is what your responsibilities are. This is how you will be evaluated. This is when you will be evaluated. If you want to move on to job B, this is what you need to do to be to prepare yourself so that you can make sure that this is something that you can move on to. And along with those clearly delineated positions need to be well-defined compensation plans. And I don't just say salary, because compensation is so many more elements than simply salary. Compensation includes the basic W-2, it includes a whole variety of benefits. So organizations who really want to move all their talent up the ranks in their organization, they have very clear position channels. They have very clear compensation channels. They have, as you can hear me saying without saying it yet, the four-letter word starts with a P and ends with an N. They have a plan and they're intentional. And as I've already said, they're transparent and they continue this work. They come up with a process. They continue the work. They nurture their pipeline. They care about who they recruit. They care about how they interview. They care about retaining. They're really paying attention, and all of the above. This is a financial show. Why are we talking about this? It's not just because it's Women's History Month. Any organization that does all of these things that we started talking about just a few minutes ago, it has been proven time and again that the bottom line of the organization improves because their talent pool is larger. Their talent pool is more stable. Their talent pool is happier. And morale is good for the bottom line. And that's also been proven.
You know, Joslyn, you brought up a great point about corporate culture. You don't seem to notice corporate culture unless it's toxic or bad. You never hear about great corporate culture, but you always hear about the bad stuff. So how does corporate culture influence the work experience for women employees?
Well, in so many ways, the most obvious way is that if there are women at higher levels, then women in more entry-level positions realize that there is a way for them to move forward in their own careers and to advance. But I must tell one story about corporate culture that I find absolutely charming. And that is that one of the organizations that has many best practices, that is a regional firm and also by now a national and international firm, but it's incorporated here in this area. They have been trying for well over a decade to really build a corporate culture that is far superior really than many. And one of the things they wanted to do, in addition to providing maternity leave, was to provide paternity leave. And this is a major financial firm. Well, as you will not be surprised to learn, paternity leave, at first, the guys didn't go for it because if a gentleman went out on paternity leave, he had too much pushback from his male colleagues about the fact that he was a wimp and didn't have a wife at home to take care of this stuff. So what they did was they now require 1 month of paternity leave. So again, you have to have a plan. You have to be intentional. You have to want the best possible environment for your employees and for their lives beyond the workplace, because all of this impacts everybody's well-being.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, in terms of lifestyle and how these responsibilities are shared between spouses or partners, I've heard statistics that women are primarily responsible for a lot of this. And in our last minute here, can you talk a little bit about, even in dual income households, how the household labor chores are split and how that can impact the work-life balance?
Well, it impacts everything. As we kind of started this conversation talking about, it absolutely impacts women's ability to advance, and this is very important, women's perception of their ability to advance. If their organization doesn't make it possible for their advancement to also be family friendly, and just in pure terms, the very most recent statistic I saw, which was published within the last few weeks, is that men might assume, if there's a male partner in the household, he might assume up to 20% of the domestic and keeping the household running work. So that means the woman in the household is responsible for 80%. That is a little out of balance, as we know.
Yeah, that is way out of balance. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure meeting you on International Women's Day. And I look forward to seeing you at some of the forum events. And I know there's some good events coming up. So I invite all of our folks in the audience to sign up for some of these great events at the Forum of Executive Women. So anyway, our next guest on Money Matters TV is Mark O'Donnell, who I actually know and love. He's the CEO of EES Worldwide. And thank you, everybody out there, for watching Money Matters TV. We will see you next time.